Welcome everyone, StealthyShiroean here, and today I'm bringing you my review of the Humble Choice Bundle for April 2025. A new month and no origin keys, so that's already a plus. I wasn't sure that some of these games would hold up for me, so it was an interesting month to play. Let me know what you think of this month's bundle in the comments below. Be sure to check the timestamps for specific games, and stay tuned for my final thoughts in the end. Okay, let's get to the review. Starting off the bundle is Nomad Survival, a game of the Survivors variety. For those who don't know, you control an auto-attacking character that has to fight off hordes of enemies. You level up, get new skills, that are also auto-attacks, or new passives, and continue facing down said hordes of enemies until you eventually die or beat the final boss of the level. And that's exactly what Nomad Survival brings to the table. I never really put that much time into Vampire Survivors, where the genre originated, or at least became popularized, but I can't say I noticed much difference. I'd imagine that's not a bad thing for fans of the genre and are not looking for something any different. Nomad Survivors seems to have a lot of unlocks and upgrades to purchase, so each run can be meaningful even if you lose, as well as providing the player incentive for continual play. As someone who put in almost 2 hours into my time with the game, I can say that I can understand the addictive nature of it. It felt incredibly satisfying to create skill combinations that made me feel like no one could touch my character, and getting gold to improve the upgrades I could find in a run amplified that feeling to play just one more to see how much better I could do. However, at the same time, all I really did was walk around in circles, avoid enemies, and pick up XP nuggets. Once I found a combination of skills that worked, there wasn't much thought behind my choices, and I found myself drifting off while playing the game. Admittedly, I was a bit drowsy when I sat down to play, but ultimately, I just don't feel that many of these types of games are that engaging for me. If you're like me, then maybe check out my video on Hordes of Hunger, which is a Survivor-like, but 3D and with full control over your player's actions. As far as Nomad Survival goes, it's probably good for people who like these games, but I don't know that I'd be coming back to it. Distant Worlds 2 follows up last month with another space strategy game. However, this time it's a massive 4x strategy where you take the reins of a budding space empire. For those familiar with Stellaris, it reminded me a lot of that, but with a lot more logistical planning. There are various ships for logistics such as freighters and shuttlecrafts. All of these things have to move resources or people between ships, stations, and planets or moons. Honestly, the game as a whole seems really overwhelming. I wouldn't say their tutorial pop-ups do that much to inform new players either. Although this game is one that seems to require a lot of trial and error of just experiencing the game, similar to something like a Paradox Grand Strategy. However, Distant Worlds 2 boasts a robust automation system on their Steam page, which lets players decide how much of the game they actually want to interact with. I liked having more control over things, but I imagine as the game progresses and the Empire becomes too big to manage, having those features would be nice. I think I like Stellaris better if I were to choose between two fairly similar games, yet that's an easy decision to make given that I have much more experience with Stellaris. What I played of Distant Worlds was very difficult to determine if it's something worth playing or not, since an hour is hardly a drop in a bucket for a game like this. That said, I was intrigued by the concept of it all and wouldn't mind returning to it one day. Next up is Diplomacy is Not an Option, which was a nice surprise since I didn't really know what to expect with this. It's a horde survival real-time strategy where you play as a ruler fending off waves of enemies. In my case, it was revolting peasants.
Peasants are revolting.
They've always been revolting, Prince. But now, they're rebelling.
Coincidentally, I recently had played a similar title called Age of Darkness, which I made a review for, and was interested in how things would compare. In Diplomacy, managing your economy plays a much bigger role, as compared to Age of Darkness. At first, it reminded me of playing Age of Empires. You need to gather resources like wood, stone, and various food items. These help fund your military and new buildings, such as other civilian structures, barracks, and of course, defenses. At the start, the map is seeded with a bunch of scattered enemies that you can hunt down to get more resources. One interesting thing was that if you didn't eliminate these enemies, then they'd join the final wave. And yes, periodically, after X amount of in-game days, you get attacked by a big wave of enemies. It's here where your defenses are tested, and hopefully you survive to fight another day. Personally, I like the focus on economy, and their emphasis on in-game physics was kind of fun. However, this is only a single-player game with no plans for multiplayer. That really killed my enthusiasm since I know I'd probably play this game a lot if it had multiplayer. It still felt like a fun game and I'd recommend giving it a go, but I don't imagine I'll put quite as much time into it compared to Age of Darkness or even another RTS in general. Nova Lands reminded me a lot of February's My Little Universe. The concept is fairly similar, which is to gather a bunch of resources in order to improve your setup to gather more resources. Nova Lands takes it a little further though. Players start the game by crash landing on a planet and immediately get to work harvesting resources. Once you gather some starter resources from the small island you're on, then you can start building things like a furnace and research station. Eventually, you construct a radar beacon that lets you discover new islands to travel to and gain more resources. Furthermore, you meet a few others who crashed with you, and after giving them some startup, they could help you by making upgraded equipment, for a cost of course. Like a better oxygen tank, since for some reason you can only build a device that makes oxygen on your starting island. Additionally, there's a whole automation feature where you could set up robots that could do some tasks for you to allow yourself more exploration and rare resource gathering. The game also introduced combat in the form of a laser rifle, which I thought was fairly standard. However, according to their Steam page, violence isn't necessary even when it comes to getting resources from bosses, which is interesting. The whole gameplay loop felt really addicting because the game always had me chasing after that next carrot. Definitely had a good time with this one.
So this is a kit for healing?
Precisely.
Rather small for such an important function, don't you think?
I concur. Foolish, if you ask me.
1000X Resist is one of those games that I would have expected to not like. While not quite a visual novel or walking simulator, it's one of those games that is narrative first and gameplay second, or third or fourth in this case. Even the beginning of the game felt to me like it was going to be something too abstract or vague for me to follow. But over my hour and a half with it, the game quickly changed my mind. You play as Watcher, who views the memories of the All-Mother as a way to observe and learn from them. For what purpose, I'm not really sure at the moment, other than it gives a good narrative hook. The reason being is because Watcher exists in a far-flung future where humanity has been all but wiped out by a deadly virus brought by aliens known only as the Occupants. All-Mother happened to be a normal human once who was immune to the disease. Over time, she cloned herself and created a whole civilization of nothing but her clones. These clones, including Watcher, all serve different purposes and all seek to help All-Mother in stopping the virus and the Occupants. The game has you moving through different timelines, learning about the All-Mother, and also a conspiracy that maybe she isn't quite the deity-like being all the clones have been led to believe. I found myself getting invested in learning more about what was going on and the characters the game introduced. It helps that I have something of a weak spot for stories with multiple timelines, so this was bound to catch my interest. As I said, normally this wouldn't be my kind of game. I think the last game I played like this to completion was To the Moon. That said, I'd be keen to come back and finish this one. Aliens Dark Descent is a real-time tactical squad management game set in the iconic setting of Aliens. And man, this game really went for that cinematic opening for the prologue, and it did a lot to pull me into the game. It did feel a bit slow at start and felt a bit awkward, however it ramps up quickly and everything goes to hell in a handbasket when the aliens start killing everyone aboard the station. Obviously, fans of the Aliens franchise will get the most out of this game. As someone who's only watched the original Alien movie, I was a bit confused by some of the name drops, but it didn't really deter my enjoyment with it. Oh, I guess I did watch Prometheus, but didn't care for it and actually didn't know it was set in the Aliens universe until I saw it in theaters. Anyway, I mentioned that this is a tactical game where you control a squad of, obviously, colonial marines. However, you don't actually control each individual member. Instead, the squad acts as one unit with a variety of skills that the members can pull off. The game throws in extra things like hiding from the aliens, essentially cover, and growing stress levels for when the horror becomes too much for them. The game has a hub-like area similar to XCOM as well. Here you could have soldiers convalesce in the infirmary, get new equipment created, conduct research, and outfit a squad to enter the fray once more. I'm obviously not the target audience, but I think the game did a lot to make me want to continue playing. I was surprised at how well this game nailed the tense atmosphere and sense of dread that I remember when watching the original movie. And all this in a top-down perspective, which I think is difficult to pull off. All in all, I'm looking forward to returning to this, and maybe actually getting around to watching the rest of the Aliens movies. The penultimate game of the bundle is Dredge, a Lovecraftian horror game about fishing. This has been one that I've wanted to play for a while. Funny enough, I found that I actually owned this on Epic but had never played it. So I'm happy now that it's sitting in my Steam library so I won't forget about it again. In Dredge, you play an angler just looking to make an honest living, catching lots of different fish and selling them. However, the area where you've decided to set up shop is eerie, mysterious, and disturbing, which is obviously the perfect setting for a game with Lovecraftian inspirations. The horror here is definitely a slow burn, which is what I would expect, but it still did a good job making me want to learn more about my surroundings. The venture out into the unknown seas with the promise of coming across some mind-shattering revelation or horror is compelling. The gameplay here is fairly simple. Maneuvering the boat isn't too hard, but I imagine later areas will come with more hazardous terrain. Fishing is also simple enough as it's just a quick button press to speed up the fishing. Dredging the waters for hidden treasure, or junk, has its own minigame as well that requires a bit faster reflexes, but still a simple concept. Although all these actions take up time, and once it's night, a fog blankets the water. This makes it hard to navigate the sea, but also tears away at your sanity the longer you stay out. Haven't really seen how this affects the player yet, but what cosmic horror game wouldn't have a sanity meter? I love Lovecraftian horror, so as I said, it's been one I've been wanting to play for a long time. Definitely want to come back to this soon. The headliner for the month is the remastered collection of the original first 3 Tomb Raider games. As far as remasters go, I think they're decent. They give you the option to use the original game's controls or the more modern controls, which I happily obliged, and they have the cool feature of switching between the game's original graphics and the slick new remastered graphics, although I think most would just stick with the updated graphics. I did think it was kind of funny that the cutscenes look worse than the actual game, but it's probably because there's only so much they could do to clean up the cutscene visuals without recreating it from scratch. As far as gameplay goes, well, I think that will depend on your nostalgia for the franchise and your love of 3D platforming. Besides the first game in the reboot trilogy, I never really played Tomb Raider. I think we may have had a demo as a kid, but I can't remember. Although, I guess that's sort of a lie. When I was playing through the start of the first game, I realized that some of this felt very familiar. After looking through my library, I found that I put about half an hour into Tomb Raider Anniversary, which happened to be a remake of the original game. Although I wasn't really aware of that and didn't even remember that I played or owned it until now. So the more you know, I guess. Anyway, after playing about 30 or so minutes in each of the 3 games, they all felt okay, but a bit awkward even with modern controls. I think it's more of a me problem though, and I need to get used to the platforming in order to get the jumps right. Combat felt the same, but I wasn't sure if I was doing it right. It seemed to be just running around like a chicken with your head cut off while shooting at whatever wild animal was trying to maul your face off. I do like that I have this bit of gaming history in my library though, but at the same time I'm not sure if I'd play them. Or if I did, if I'd have the patience to complete them. For fans of the franchise, then I'm sure this will be a welcome addition. Okay, let's wrap this up and see if this bundle is worth it or not. I based my rating solely on whether I thought the game was worth playing on about an hour or so of hands-on gameplay. Also, I'd be grateful if you could please give the video a like if you're enjoying it, because that really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm gods. Overall, this month is a solid month. I mean, we didn't get any origin keys at all, so I'm sure many are happy about that. Fans of respective franchises will probably be happy to get the Aliens game and the remastered Tomb Raider games. And there's even a couple other surprise hits in there that I definitely wouldn't have expected. So without further ado, let me tell you my recommendations. My must-plays this month are Dredge and Aliens Dark Descent. Dredge was pretty much always going to be a must-play for me. I could see the minigames and inventory management becoming tedious to some players, but the setting and atmosphere just elevates this title for me immensely. Can't wait to go back to fishing up creepy Cthulhu fishies. Aliens Dark Descent was just really impressive for me in the first hour. Once again, this is another game that nails the feeling. I think there is a caveat here because I'm unsure if this keeps this quality throughout, or if it just had a strong opening. In my strong recommendations, I've placed Novalands, 1000X Resist, and Diplomacy is Not an Option. Novalands, like My Little Universe a couple months back, is one of those games that I wouldn't expect to like, but it turns out that I do. And I actually like Novalands more than My Little Universe, probably because I like the visuals and progression better. 1000X Resist finds its way into strong recs because of how quickly it changed my mind from thinking this game wasn't for me, to becoming invested in the story and characters. The writing felt stilted at times, but mostly well done, and the overall narrative brought a mystery that was compelling enough for me to want to see to its conclusion. Finally, Diplomacy is Not an Option is a solid Horde survival RTS that places a heavier focus on building out an economy. While the lack of multiplayer does bum me out, the game seemed good, and I think many won't be bothered that it's single player only. In my week recommendations are Tomb Raider Remastered Collection, Distant Worlds 2, and Nomad Survival. The Tomb Raider Remastered Collection is a nice addition, but without the nostalgia goggles that many have, I just don't think I would be able to play these with the same reverence. I'm sure it's great for those who do, though. Distant Worlds 2 has an interesting concept, but it felt really overwhelming. I think it would be cool to come back to this when I have some time to try and learn the game. Finally, Nomad Survival seems like a fun Vampire Survivors clone, if only for that constant feeling of wanting to see how far you can get this run. The style of gameplay I'm still iffy about, but I see the appeal and didn't think it was horrible. And there's nothing in my Don't Bother With section, which is great since we haven't had a month in a while where it's been like that. So good job, Humble. Do you agree with my thoughts? What games, if any, are you looking forward to playing? Let me know what your thoughts are, or if there are any different recommendations you'd make in the comments below. I hope this video helped you in some small way, and if it did, then please consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, or whatever it is you feel like doing. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day.